What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I am with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
So yeah, a little bit of a change up here. So I did finish Ratchet and Clank. I know last time on the show we talked how I was pretty much done. So I did complete it. I was at the final boss, just like I thought. So, great game. Really good ending. It kind of anticlimactic in the way where I guess I'm used to games just ending on this huge note, and this one kind of just like is over. Like it just kind of comes to an end, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Other Ratchet and Clank games I felt like always crescendoed, where this one kind of fizzled and was just like, all right, that's the end of the journey. But at the completion, when I beat the game, I was already like 5 trophies away from the platinum, so I was like, I sucked it up, got the platinum. Wasn't really hard at all. The only thing you have to do is pretty much, unless you're good enough, look up a guide to collect the teddy bears that are hidden throughout, which again took, I don't know, 20 minutes to get the ones I was missing. So I platinumed it. Still really love that game. I really think it's just there's something really special about Ratchet and Clank that they've been able, after all these years, to stick around and do things that all these other mascots can't do. But a really great game, and what a great, just like, the true power of like the PS5, where I'm like, I played and I'm like, and all these rumors of games coming back and forth, I'm like, I really hope this stays here, because not only does it justify the system, obviously, but I just also think this is the way it should be experienced. I'm sure low texture, loading time, and stuff like that, and removing a lot of particle effects can make the game work on PS4. But I just don't want people to experience it that way. I want people to experience the game more, obviously, but for those people who first get a PS5 finally once it starts in rotation, I think this would be a great one to start off that journey. So really happy with that game. Continue from there on. Obviously, I don't know if we've spoken since, but it was we did the Sonic's anniversary thing. There was that big anniversary stream, so I've been playing my yearly dose of Sonic games. So awesome. I plowed through Sonic Adventure 1 obviously pretty quickly. I don't do completion run or whatever. I just kind of beat it and continue on.
Character, like a Sonic run?
No. A full.
Oh, okay. You do all the characters. Cool.
Yeah, I'm just not like getting all the emblems and stuff like that. So, I suck it up because how I feel about the Big of the Cat sections. And
it's rough.
It's rough, but I put a podcast on and I plowed through those sections pretty quickly. And I mean, we've praised these games enough, and we always will. I know I know, especially Sonic Adventure 1 that's your jam right there.
Oh yeah.
But we always say that we play these games pretty much at least minimum once a year, and yeah. I thought, why not do it obviously here with Sonic's 35th anniversary, and great time for that. In the process of doing Sonic Adventure 2, I kind of got hooked on the Chow Garden thing again, so I'm like super slow with it. You're getting all the right animals and things like that. And that one, I'm not the most fond of the Knuckles Rouge sections too, so as soon as I hit that level, I usually stop and go play something else. And then to cap it off, I jumped back into Sonic Unleashed, which I've played on and off throughout the years and stuff like that. But there's just something, I don't know what it is about that game, that I keep always wanting to come back to play it. And I don't know if it was just hearing the music and the orchestra section and the way they did that whole scene was really great. So I'm actually playing that. It's the first time I've played it on the Xbox through backwards compatibility. I usually hook up the PS3 for it. And it's funny, I feel like it plays a tiny bit better. I just don't know if that's the 360 version in general, or if there was some small tweak, or just the system itself helps it. But when I played Sonic Unleashed on PS3 last year, actually, I want to say it was last year, the controls were very weird and sort of delayed, and I don't know, there's something awkwardly floaty about it. Where on the Xbox, so I'm playing obviously on the Series X, I can I control Sonic a little bit better. I can do the, eventually it does that 3-lane thing where left trigger goes to the left side, right trigger to that side. That seems a little bit more tight when I'm running and not hitting those buttons. So I'm strangely enough enjoying it a lot more than I usually. Usually it's such a more of a chore to get through some of the Sonic Unleashed parts. But it's been an interesting time with that. So yeah, celebrating Sonic, obviously, because you know me, diehard Sonic fan. Why quit now? And then to cap it off, all I've really been playing in really just when I have time or when something's installing or updating. Mario Golf on the Switch. I did pick it up. I actually forgot I had it pre-ordered, so I got some pins at GameStop, which was I never pre-ordered anything at GameStop, so it was wild when I went in there and they gave me stuff. Yeah, it's golf with a Mario skin. I don't mean that in a bad way. I know these Mario sports games either really hit high or really hit low for me. I have not played any of these special versions, the Blitz running or that weird one where you play as the Mii adventure mode. I'll be honest, I have not touched any of those other two blocks. I hit golf, and I've just been working my way down the list, doing different holes. Depending on how much time I have, I'll do 3, 6, 18 holes. That's a big commitment. I feel like I'm there forever. Playing 18 holes, I don't know why. But the game's really, really pretty. I think it's a really solid one. I don't know why they have that awesomely awkward anime opening with the black and white.
Yeah.
But it is Mario Golf. It's what I wanted in a Mario Golf. I know people have been kind of hating on it for lackluster features, which makes sense why during E3 they were like, oh, and we have more content coming to the game, even though the game wasn't released yet. And I'm like, oh, now I kind of see why, because you can kind of deflect some of that, and you can obviously see where the other characters are going to come to and things like that. But I'm having a fun time, Again, the same. I put music on or an album on or whatever I'm listening to. I do a couple holes. I'm not the best golf, but there's still tons of golf mechanics that I feel I don't understand in the game. Also, I feel like the camera's somewhat wonky and I can't see where I'm trying to actually hit the ball, which is really weird to me. And I don't know if that's just an experience I'm having and no one else has kind of noticed, but all in all, it's Mario Golf, and I'm having a good time. And I'm generally a fan of the Mario sports games. Sometimes the twists they try to throw in don't work for me, but luckily this one feels like straight up golf. So that's everything I've been playing, just kind of cleaning up some stuff and then get into my usual rituals. So I've actually been having an enjoyable time. So what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I've been playing a crap ton of stuff. I guess I'll start where you finished. I also have been playing Mario Golf. I got it as a present, so I would admit that because I was apprehensive about paying the full $60 for that, but thankfully somebody gave it to me, so I wouldn't have to worry about that necessarily. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I 100% understand the critiques of it, and I pretty much feel the same way. It's just, for the most part, what I go to Mario Golf for is simple enough that it's kind of hard for them to miss at that point. I'm definitely more of like a everybody's golf or like Hot Shots golf type of guy, more so.
Absolutely.
Since the Toadstool Tour era, and onwards, I've been more on that side. But this has definitely brought me more back into the Mario side, and I think it's pretty fun. There's things I like about it, I do like the roster that it included Rosalina and Pauline, from the beginning. I liked that. Very bare bones in terms of the amount of courses, so that was unfortunate. I know they're going to be adding more, but 6 to launch is very, very low. So that was really surprising. I have been able to play all the modes pretty much. So obviously you can unlock the courses, I think, just by doing kind of 18 holes in one, and then you unlock the next one. 18 is a while. So I usually break it in half personally. I'll do 9, and then I'll suspend my Switch, go play something else, and then I'll go back and do another 9. 18 is just nuts, but I get it done. I have played the story mode. Don't really like it that much. It's really interesting, though. I see what they were trying to do, where it opens up. It feels like a Pokemon game, to be honest with you, where you kind of start off in your room, and there's Birdo there who kind of takes the role of a motherly figure, and she's kind of guiding you, hey, you're going to be joining the tournament finally, and whatever, and you go out and set out on your adventure, and they give you different things. Not a big fan of that mode, though. There's a surprising amount of dialogue, not so much lore, just general concepts that they're explaining to you, and it's just not really the way I like to experience my Mario Golf, so I'm not really into that. But that mode allows you to kind of get a real crash course on the real live time running to your ball kind of mechanic, which is it's interesting. It's not hard to upgrade your person to the point where nobody can even really get near you. So your speed would just be so much higher, and your drives are so much farther than everybody else's that it's, even though it's live time, and I guess you could look behind you and see them running after you, it didn't really feel like that for me because they would rarely catch up, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's a gimmick that I'm not particularly fond of. I think there is a way that they could possibly make it work in the future, so I don't think it's something they should necessarily scrap, but it just really ain't it for this. But if you're going to just play golf, like that's all you're interested in, especially if you're not really even interested in kind of like the specialty offs and stuff like that, it gets the job done plenty. I would say wait till it goes on sale, but the problem is like Nintendo games don't really go on sale very often, so if you could find it discounted in any way, I think that's probably what you should pounce on that. I think this is a very solid like $30-$40 game personally. 60 I think is steep unless you are literally able to get 20 plus hours out of just playing very simple golf. Unless you're one of those people, then maybe it would be a tough recommendation at $60 for me personally.
Absolutely.
But I do enjoy the game. I guess next was I beat the Mass Effect trilogy. I did a pretty much completionist run of 3. I did every single mission that they had in there. I got a good ending. I did all the DLCs and stuff like that. Had a fantastic time with that. And so I jumped into Andromeda, as I said I was going to do. And I also beat Andromeda. So I have a very interesting report here. So yeah, I beat Andromeda. It took me just under 25 hours or something like that. But admittedly, around the 60 to 70% point of the game, I stopped doing a lot of the side content. They have a way in that game of really roping you into a whole bunch of side content that is not technically like the priority missions for the story, and they're not loyalty missions either, but they're missions attached to your core cast, so it's almost like mini loyalty missions, if that makes sense. And there's just a ton of stuff that keep you crazy sidetracked. But around like the 70% marker, I was like, you know what, I've kind of had enough, and I started asking around and looking up, and I realized that not much of what you do has real consequence, especially in the end sequence. Especially, I mean, I don't know what happens if you don't do the loyalty missions, but for the most part, if you do all of those, you can pretty much mainline the story, and nothing really bad is going to happen to you. So I was like, you know what, I've kind of had enough of this game. So I just went for it. I did the ending, and yeah, things wrapped up fine. I won't get too much into the ending, other than the fact that it's hilarious and sad how much they set up for like an obvious trilogy that is probably never going to happen now. So that's really interesting. It is one of those games, I mean, I'll give it some credit on stuff. It's not irredeemable. Like, it does get much better as the game goes along. Personally, I found it much more playable. Those first like couple hours were kind of rough for me, and I'm like, God, what a rough transition from this Mass Effect trilogy that I just finished playing to this. But things do warm up a lot better. Probably 5 hours into the game, I'd say, which I know is a little bit of Persona logic there. That's a lot of time. And there's a lot of systems that I think are kind of like unnecessary in that game that they add into there, but I think there are some redeeming stuff about it. The cast is kind of terrible, honestly. And I would admit that one of the biggest things Andromeda has going against it is just that name. That the fact that it's a Mass Effect game coming after 3 it puts it at a disadvantage immediately. And then that cast in comparison, like there's PB, who's an Asari. Like, she's just not Liara, you know what I mean? There's Vetra, she's cool, but it's just not Garrus. So that's the problem. And then Drac, who is the Krogan there, is literally an old amalgamation of Grunt and Rex. That's all he is. Like, he's literally a warmonger old dude who just wants to smash through things and go to the bar. He's just an amalgamation of every Krogan you kind of encountered. And so, I think there was kind of a lack of originality on that part. Cora is kind of interesting. She's a human with a strange attachment and fascination to Asari, so that was strange. I don't know. There's things. I know a lot of people had a terrible experience with this game because they played it when it was like completely like unpatched, and there was expectations coming into it, and so it was an extraordinarily rough experience. And I'm getting to play the patched version years later. There was no DLC, so it's not like I'm getting more content per se, but I get to just kind of play the game as is, and it's fine. I think for me it would cap off, like if I had to put a number score, and I'm not really a number score guy, it maybe like a 5.5, maybe. Like, it's not complete trash, but it leaves a lot to be desired. And I feel like if this storyline got to see its natural end with 2 more games, perhaps I'd look more fondly upon this game because we'd get to see where everything began. You know what I mean? Like, as I kind of said, like if Mass Effect 1 kind of ended there, I think it's rated much lower than it in the context of the trilogy, if that makes sense. And so I feel like this game's not good for many reasons, but I think that's another thing, is the fact that you don't get to see any of these stories really see its natural end. So it's like, imagine if you were playing Mass Effect and it kind of ended there with the first one, and so that just leaves Saren as the main bad guy. You never really get into the Reaper stuff. You never get to see the Protheans. It's the exact same thing here. They set up some big storylines, but for the most part, you fight against the main bad guys of the game, who are not like an existential threat by any means. And they set up some stuff where it's like, oh man, there's some stuff going on in this galaxy behind the scenes, but they don't get the chance to explore any of it, and the chances are they're probably never going to. So it's like a weird game that's kind of just floating in the ether, just on itself, by itself. You know what it feels like? Do you remember when Tom Cruise's The Mummy came out like a couple years ago?
Yeah.
And that was supposed to launch like a new monster universe, but the monster universe got canceled. Yeah.
Yep.
So now that's just kind of floating there. And like it did a whole bunch of stuff, but it's never gonna amount to anything. That's what it feels like. Andromeda going all the way through it. So it's a weird place to end off. It makes me super fascinated to see what they do with Mass Effect in the future. But I think rewatching that little teaser trailer, it's abundantly obvious that they're going to do some kind of spiritual successor to the trilogy, or just straight up Mass Effect 4. I seriously doubt they'll do Andromeda 2. Yeah, so that's kind of my report on it. I doubt I'll ever touch it again. There's no real reason to. I'll much more likely to go back to it. To be honest with you, I'm much more likely to go back to Mass Effect 3 of the entire trilogy to play that Citadel DLC again, because I love that thing. It's so good. So yeah, that was my Mass Effect experience, and then I got one more for you. I've been playing Dragon Age, actually. So it's been it's been a franchise I've wanted to play for a long time. It's BioWare. And so I started playing Origins, the first one. And I actually got like 8 hours in, and I encountered a glitch that is not uncommon. I went on Reddit and I found multiple people who the same thing happened to them. And funnily enough, on the Series X itself, where I was playing it, where I just can't leave my camp. I just can't. Like, there's a point where I'm going to the world map, it throws you into your camp, you talk to your characters. I talked to like Morgan and Alistair or whatever, and my dog that I named John. And I went to go assign the party, and you go to leave, and it throws you back into the camp, and I just can't leave. And I reloaded a save, and I got to the same point, and I just can't leave my camp. And to be honest with you, I was sitting there, and I was like, you know what? The game is alright, but the gameplay is not nearly good enough to justify me trying like this hard to leave my camp. So I just loaded up Dragon Age 2, and I've been playing that now. And it's much better. Not necessarily from a narrative standpoint, because I'm not nearly deep enough to comment on that at all. And I only made it 8 hours of the first one, so I guess I'm not really in a position to comment on that either. But just from a gameplay standpoint, obviously it plays a lot better. And so I'll have much more to talk about on the next episode, because I'm not deep in there at all. I'm probably max an hour into 2. But my intention is to make it through 2 and then to go through Inquisition, because I just want to be in a position that when Dragon Age 4 comes out, I'm able to jump into it and know something what's going on. And that's why I wanted, like, for example, like to replay through Mass Effect. Obviously, it being so good, but obviously when a new Mass Effect comes out, I wanted that all fresh in my mind to get every single reference, every single joke that they make. And I would like to be in a similar position with Dragon Age, but unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but the first one just broke on me. So I might try deleting the file again, because I have it on disk, and try reloading it with the disk, and maybe that might help me a little bit or something, because I would like to see it through. I made it 8 hours in. It's not a particularly difficult game to play. It's a little wonky, of course. It's really it's mind-blowing how terrible it feels for 2009. Like, I could not believe. I always would have sworn that Dragon Age Origins was a base Xbox game, and when I found out it was 360 in 2009, I'm like, why does it feel like this? Like, Gears of War came out on this console. Like, Call of Duties came out on this console. Why does this feel like this? But it feels kind of like bad Diablo, but it's a fun game. I would say it's very fun, and I think as it gets better with the gameplay and the narratives are already good to go, I think I can really end up enjoying this franchise, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. So I'll let you know more next week when I get through more 2. Who knows? I might have beat 2 by that point, now that I beat Mass Effect. And I can kind of probably just focus on it. And Mario Golf is not going to be my main game ever. So I'm probably going to focus my efforts on Dragon Age. And I'll have more to report next week then.
All right. I'm very interested to hear that, because Dragon Age is also one of those series that's just kind of been missing me at certain times, and that's a big demand, go from Mass Effect to right into the Dragon Age series. So I'm excited to hear what you think.
Yeah, just back-to-back BioWare, man.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe after all this, I'll play Anthem next. No thanks, I'm never going back to it.
I would highly suggest you don't do that.
I was actually thinking about that the other day, where I'm like, it blows my mind what the name BioWare meant at one time, and the fact that they hit us back to back with Andromeda to Anthem now, and like what BioWare means to a lot of people now, especially younger players who did not really go back to those KOTOR days or Mass Effect or Dragon Age when they were like really killing it. Like, when you talk about BioWare to some players now, their only experience with them is Andromeda and Anthem, and it's like, holy crap, like, what happened? So
hopefully
I guess
they bounce back.
Yeah, so yeah, hopefully. I mean, it looks like they got their head on straight now. They see, because they're developing the next Mass Effect, the next Dragon Age. So it seems like they're going back to what was their golden age. So fingers crossed. And they'd know better than to put a freaking B team on Mass Effect again.
Again.
So I guess we can jump into the stories. We have PlayStation acquiring a new team, and it's a PC porting specialist, Nixxes. So PlayStation has acquired Nixxes, a Dutch studio that specializes in porting games to PC. This was announced by the head of PlayStation Studios, Herman Holtz, where he's been, giving it up lately at all these interviews, but this guy won't stop. Nixxes has been bought for an undisclosed fee. The studio will provide high-quality in-house technical and development capabilities for PlayStation Studios, according to a press release. So, a little bit of background on the team. Nixxes has worked extensively with Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and IO Interactive since forming in 1999, porting the recent Tomb Raider trilogy, the 2 most recent Deus Ex games to PC. So, obviously, they have a relationship with Square there. While no specifics have been given about Nixxes' work with PlayStation, it feels likely that the studio will support Sony's increased focus on porting its console-exclusive games to PC. So that's the main reason why I wanted to talk about this, is obviously we've seen kind of an increase in Sony's involvement or interest in bringing their games to PC, and they have a very different strategy, as we've talked about from Microsoft. But this is an interesting move, kind of have a team dedicated to porting that game over. So that makes me wonder, like, what additional to whatever franchises that they can pull from in the past, does this mean that maybe we can have people working on a PC port at the same time, or not even necessarily at the same time, but at immediately after a major first-party game comes out, so maybe they can shorten that time a little bit, or maybe have a higher experience. I think this opens up a lot of possibilities. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I thought the same. PlayStation was, they went from being so kind of hush-hush about the PC stuff to coming out and announcing this, because if it wasn't for the fact that they did this post, we probably wouldn't have known about this. The fees not talked about, anything like that. They came out publicly saying, this is Nixxes, which is a PC porting specialist. And I think you're very onto something with the time thing, because that's a big thing that people have been trying to throw in their face. I think even Phil Spencer sort of tongue-in-cheek threw some shade in that aspect. But this, to have them co-working with people, because it's a whole lot easier to start porting something when you're working with a company from the ground, not like, oh, here's the master file, you figure it out. And we've seen Sony have kind of mixed reactions and results in porting stuff over. Death Stranding, not too much, but I remember Horizon came out not broken, but didn't run nearly as well. And so having someone this is what they do, this is what they have, this is what their specialty is, makes a whole lot more sense to be like, listen, what it is to take a file or whatever and get it running properly on PCs, especially, PCs have such a a scale of what they could be, where Sony really focuses just right now, on one system, 2 SKUs at max with pros and stuff like that. So having and then not worrying about anything really leaking, because this is a studio who now is acquired by them. Like, this is what you do for us, instead of like, oh, this is a company that just does it for tons of people. And like, no, this is what they do, and this is what their job is for Sony. So I think, this sounds all great. I don't know. Again, it's hard to rate on their studios or on their work, especially when, I haven't played the Deus Exes on on PC and stuff like that, but I never remember hearing any real issue with like the Tomb Raider trilogy. I heard that ran fine on PC. I heard it ran the best on PC. So I'm excited to see this, and I wonder how much time they close that gap in, because again, right now we're on that 2 year sort of gap between when we get the console release and when we get a PC release.
Correct.
So it makes me think, are we closing it on maybe a 6-month release or a year specific release? It's interesting, again, it's not where I'm going to play my PlayStations, because most of those IPs I want to play day one. So, and that's what the consoles are for. So, but if you are, this is all you have is a PC, this is great news for you, because that means one way or another, you will eventually start getting those PlayStation, first party studio games, on your PCs, which, that's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I was thinking is, Sony has communicated their strategy multiple times to people, which is like, we are in a lot of support of putting our games on PC, but never at the expense of our PlayStation home experience. So that means anything that could possibly encroach on any sale that they can make in the PlayStation ecosystem on those consoles is kind of a no-go for them. So that's why, and it seems like you're on the same boat, day and date is probably, I wouldn't say never going to happen, but very unlikely. Where, like the PC version is going to come out the exact same day the console version. There's not a chance in how I think they let that happen for now. But when you have this dedicated manpower, I think this also not only can close that gap a little bit, but I think it puts you in, as I was saying, having that dedicated manpower on the Sony side not only can, as you said, close that gap a little bit, but also put them in a situation where like they can port a lot more of the back catalog. So I wouldn't be surprised before we start seeing like God of War Ragnarok really, really close or stuff like that. I think it's a higher chance that we might see like The Last of Us 1 and 2 being put on PC. I think this opens up like the Uncharted collection, for example, just being thrown onto PC and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to leverage those games probably first, and then simultaneously try to close that gap a little bit. But again, the unfortunate thing is I think the massive gap between the releases between console and PC is more of like a player side thing. Like, I don't think Sony really cares that much, to be honest with you. Because otherwise, we're talking about like Horizon being put on PC like 3 years after its release, or 2.5 years after the release, when like sales on console probably have dwindled to nothing. So they seem to be wanting to push for PC when they have literally nothing to lose. Like when console has evaporated, nobody cares, people have moved on, we're talking about a sequel, then PC could have it. So we can guarantee that not a single console sale is lost. And so it makes me wonder, like, even if they had the manpower to really close that gap, do they have the willingness, is my question. And only time will tell on that. But with all the money that they're pumping into PC side, it just tells me that things are changing a little bit over there. And do I expect them to take on the Microsoft strategy of like play anything anywhere? No, of course not. But I think they want to handle maybe things with a little bit more care, be a little bit more deliberate with their releases, and maybe put them in a position where it's like, hey, maybe the Sony ecosystem can spawn outside of just our consoles for the first time, which I think is an exciting prospect. I think they're going to lag in certain areas related to it, of course, because, again, that kind of united open ecosystem is just not a Sony thing. So I think that's going to come with its concessions, even with a dedicated porting studio like them. But I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. It makes me excited. I'm not even a PC player. I'm just excited for the PC players because I get frustrated with them when it's like things are released like years after and it's botched when it comes out. I'm like, I know how frustrating that could be. especially considering I think the best way I can connect with them is the fact that like when everybody was playing on 360, I was the PS3 guy. So I know how it feels to get things super late and super messed up. Like I'm the one who was playing the broken Skyrim on PS3. Like I get it. So I know how that feels, and I can get frustrated for them too. So I hope this kind of closes that gap and makes it a lot easier for PC people who love Sony IP, but for whatever reason, or not even for whatever reason, just don't really care to play on console. I think this is an exciting prospect for them.
Yeah, again, it's really only good news. I know some people were hating on it, but we're in a different time now.
Yeah.
Alright, so the next story. Media Molecule's new game, In Dreams. Media Molecule has just launched a new game in Dreams called Mega Penguin Rehatched, a sequel to an E3 2018 tech demo where Media Molecule invited friends and fans to invent new adventures for the titular character that was then recreated within Dreams. But Rehatched is something different. Rather than Media Molecule releasing a full game, it's asking the community to contribute their own ideas with a chance of having them added to the game itself later on. You know, every time I see Media Molecule in Dreams, part of me just starts to shrivel and die inside. Because what a weird thing it is to half create a game in your game engine that you sold as a game, and then ask for fans to run with it, take it, and then maybe we'll consider it part of a full game inside of our game that's actually a game tool. It's just such a weird thing to even discuss. Like as soon as I saw this story, I knew I was like, this is going to be a wild thing that it's not. My issue is that it's not going to really amount to anything. I didn't even remember this Mega Penguin E3 tech demo. I had to look it up. I had no idea what it was. It's just a giant muscle character with a penguin head on, and despite what Dreams, I've always said, is a fine tool, it's a fine set series, but real game creators, and I'm not one, nowhere near do I know how to use these tools and stuff, but I've seen people who use like Unreal Engine to create games and stuff like that, and Dreams is nowhere near on that level to do that. They all walk wonky, they all look weird, and I saw that immediately when I saw this giant penguin thing walking around. I think this is a cool concept of having like the community and stuff like that come to Dreams and, hey, take this, we're going to let you run wild with this. But I just think the games that you see in Dreams, it's been a long time since I launched Dreams. I don't have it installed anywhere. But they all end up being the same thing. Like the most popular things are on there, let's be honest, are copyrighted stuff that you can't even do. Yeah. So it's so weird. It almost makes me feel like Media Molecule, we've been for a while wanting them to create a game. I think that's the general consensus with people. I actually kind of have a feeling they don't want to. Until we hear from someone previously at Media Molecule or whatever it is, I feel like they don't want to, because this doesn't seem like the Sony move to do. The Sony move to do would have been to like start releasing games in the Dreams store for money, and I know that was hinted at once. So I don't really know what to make of this. What did you think of this? It's so weird. It's so wild.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted on it because I'm not one of those people who are like negative on Dreams. Mm-hmm. I just know what's for me and what's not for me, and Dreams is just not for me. And as far as Media Molecule goes, I think they're an incredibly talented team. But unless they make a dedicated, like another Little Big Planet game or something like that, like I'm not really interested in this kind of stuff. And I agree with you completely when you talk about like they're not seeming interested in making a new game. I got the same vibe for them. Very obviously, Dreams is like a passion project of them. It allows them to flex a little bit of their artistic side and their technical side. And maybe that's more interested to them from kind of just a game development standpoint. Maybe just making a traditional game is just not what excites them, and I can respect that. I'm super surprised that PlayStation's allowing this, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Not that they shouldn't by any means, but just paying attention to the way, this is PlayStation doesn't play around. Like they were at once upon a time, they were closing studios left and right, and they're careful with their acquisitions. They try to monetize everything. But it's interesting with, when it comes to Media Molecule, where they obviously funded their ability to make this game. and then they kind of just let them do their thing. And this game couldn't have been very profitable. Obviously, there are functions that this game provides that, and in terms of an engine standpoint, that I feel like can open up exciting opportunities outside of just the purview of Dreams, that engine itself, that game creation engine. But until we see that like kind of adopted on a mass level, I don't know if the returns have really materialized. And so that's the kind of surprising part of it. There is that I'm just surprised that Sony kind of is just letting them do this thing that's so unconventional on kind of just a AAA level. And part of me is like happy that they're able to do this, but at the same time, the selfish part of me as a gamer is kind of just like, I just wish they would put out something that kind of interests me. I don't really have any interest on playing that much kind of fan created material. Back in the day, like I had a lot of fun in Little Big Planet playing kind of, fake Sonic level or Metal Gear Solid or Call of Duty or Uncharted, stuff like that. That was fun, all the fan created content. But these days, I'm more interested in kind of like curated, created material that is very specific in what it's trying to do and its craftsmanship and stuff like that. And I don't really have time to kind of just play around and play fan created stuff. And so I respect their wish to do this, but it just doesn't have any interest to me. And so I kind of turn away until Media Molecule is ready to create something that is more conventional, I guess. And again, I acknowledge the fact that conventional creations is obviously not the direction they're trying to head into. So that might just be it for me in my Media Molecule. That's very possible, and I'm very open to that, and I celebrate that for them. But yeah, I have no interest in Dreams whatsoever. If it got really cheap, like it went on sale like crazy, I could see me picking it up for, $10-15. But other than that, I just can't see myself investing in that community.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising to me that, because I don't know what the game retails for. Because I had purchased it when it was in that early
beta thing, yeah.
Beta time for like $25. The fact that we're like 2 years later and it hasn't been a PS Plus game, I mean, that's one way to get the community pretty big, is ridiculous to me. But it does make me miss the old Media Molecule, especially. I haven't played the original Little Big Planets in a while, but those, besides having their tools and stuff in there, were still solid games. Because that's where I spent my time, is just playing the actual game.
Yeah, I had a great time with those. I mean, and I know people like kind of joke on them now these days. But I mean, back then, I thought they were really phenomenal experiences, and the only one I didn't really dabble on was the one that I don't think they made. I think Sumo Digital made it, the third one, right?
Yeah, that wasn't them. That was, I believe, Sumo Digital.
Yeah, but those first two, I mean, really, really solid entries, really, really fun. And the funny thing is, even if you weren't somebody to really play around that much with fan-created content, I think the kind of story mode itself was actually really, really fun. That was like a fun, goofy platformer with some really interesting imagery, amazing music. So I think there's certain factors that made Little Big Planet click that are just not really present in the same way in Dreams. So it's not the cleanest transition for me. To be like, well, this is what they're working on now. It's not like the spirit of Little Big Planet is all still there. Outside of creation, there's not that kind of tailored story mode. From what I know, I'm not sure if they added that, but from what I know, I don't think there's a Dreams story mode. Is there?
No, there's a created Dreams by Media Molecule in Dreams. Yeah. So it's like a level or whatever. That shows, it's pretty much like a tech demo.
Got it.
That shows really high polished stuff, but let's be honest, it's not what the community's been making. Isn't as high polished and stuff as they've made. There is one section, and not to rant on about them, where you play as this little pink thing, and it's all platforming and stuff like that, and has all these nice little tools. And that section of the game is so fun. Well, that section of their dream is really fun. Where I'm like, the part where they made a game is the best part. Which, come on.
Yeah, it's like I respect it, but it's just I have to respect from afar. Like,
yeah.
Unless give me a heads up if they release more of that kind of stuff, and I'll hop onto it. But yeah, I can't. I guess we can move into the next story, and I guess this is the first of, I would say, like a 3-part kind of narrative that's all been coming on. It's all about Konami, Kojima, and this abandoned game. But we're going to start off with Konami right now. And this is a loosely connected story, but I think it's very important for us to cover. So Konami announces a partnership with the Bloober Team. So Konami and the Bloober Team, they're the ones who made The Medium, Blair Witch, and Observer. So really talented team over there. Great stuff coming out of the Xbox ecosystem. Have announced a strategic cooperation agreement that will see the two companies developing games together, adding weight to the rumors that the Polish studio is the one that's working on the Silent Hill game. So for you guys who maybe haven't been paying the most attention, is before any of this Kojima, Silent Hills, abandoned stuff popped up, there was a lot of talk about these guys, Bloober Team, being the one to make the Silent Hill game. If you played the Medium, obviously that spirit is there. They 100% had the chops to be able to do something like that. And so with Konami linking up with them, it adds a little bit of fuel to that fire. So as detailed on Bloober's investor relations website, the partnership will include jointly developed selected contents and exchanging know-how. Konami's Hideki Hayakawa has said that the partnership would combine Bloober Teams and our respective characteristic and strengths to create high-quality content. Konami's own corporate statement implies that any collaboration between the companies is not totally finalized. We will announce information about the content of the business alliance once details have been decided. No specific projects have been detailed, but speculation and rumor have been pointed to a new Silent Hill game for some time. So this is a very interesting kind of cog in this really complex wheel of going on. Is not only is the Silent Hills, is it coming, but who's the one that's making it? And so some people are very invested in the idea that it's going to be Bloober Team who are the ones that can make it. Them having some kind of connection with Konami points to that. However, it's important to note that their partnership seems to be in its infancy. So if a Silent Hills game is well along in development, it's probably not related to this partnership, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is a very interesting kind of development here. What did you think about it?
Yeah, it was really interesting just because the whole Konami themselves, like we're saying, these three stories we're about to discuss is just Konami, and then the last one's not really. It is interesting because for a while now, especially right after the Medium launched, there were rumors about Konami wanting to work with Bloober Team to help create a Silent Hill game in collaboration or like separate from a Silent Hill game that was already being made. Cause I went back into some of our notes and I remember speaking about that story where they're like, apparently there's like a story-driven one and then there's like a different one that was in the works. Bloober Team makes sense. I'm Konami's such a weird company where I'm just like, wouldn't you just do this yourself? Bloober Team is a smaller team. I think there's not even 100 employees, I believe. But I mean, and I know it's not confirmed they're making Silent Hill. But let's be honest. I mean, they made the 2 Layers of Fear game. They did the Blair Witch game. They did the Medium.
Yeah.
So they're familiar with that theme, and there's a lot of in the Medium. There's a lot of Silent Hill. I remember you did start the Medium. I did beat it all the way through, and there's plenty of times throughout it where I'm like, this is definitely some Silent Hill inspired or vibes and stuff like that. So maybe with more time, money, and help from Konami, they can probably do a really solid Silent Hill game. It's just at the same time, I'm just like, Bloober Team is who you guys chose. I liked my time with the Medium. I just don't think it's really polished. I think there's a lot of issues with it. I'm curious how to see, because that is confirmed to be coming to PS5. I'm curious to see what it runs on PS5. The Medium at one point was the only, I think still is, the Series X exclusive game.
Yeah.
Because besides that, I don't think that's the only one. And I'm curious how the PS5 is gonna run with it. But it's just, there's so much just confusion until like we kind of see something. What's it gonna be? Because the Bloober Team, again, as respective as I think they are, the games they're making, I'm looking at the list, is almost very indie style, which is not anything against them. When you look at their games, besides, I mean, they started with a bunch of DS stuff, and then you have Basement Crawl, Brawl, Layers of Fear 2, Blair Witch, and the Medium, and all those games are like smaller horror style games. That's unless you're making purposely a smaller Silent Hill game to complement something else. I just worry if Bloober Team can handle a AAA game. So that's the only thing that really worries me. It's like they're good at doing a specific style. It doesn't always work when you flip the script on them.
Definitely, and I think it's one of those things where it's almost like a exciting story. Anytime Konami's willing to either do something with their IP or at least work with somebody doing their IP. So obviously Konami has so many different ventures outside of gaming. So anytime they want to tap back in, it's an exciting prospect just because there's always that kind of recessive hope in my brain that like one day they get it together and go back to the days of their glory. And you know, as time progresses, it seems more and more unlikely that's going to happen. So anytime I see like Konami taking a meeting or partnership or anything like that with a game studio, that can be an exciting thing. You raise excellent points about the idea that like there are likely multiple Silent Hill related projects in development at the same time. And so this story does not necessarily negate the next ones that we're going to be talking about because these can be two entirely different projects. Yeah. If Bloober Team's working on a Silent Hill game, which it makes a lot of sense that they would be, it would obviously probably be more in line with a traditional Silent Hill experience. So Silent Hills, the one that we played, the PT demo, was obviously a reinvention and a reimagining of that universe and taking it to the next level and bringing it to the modern era. The medium, if you play that, is obviously hearkening back to an older era of Silent Hill, where you know you have these fixed camera views and these environments and things are smoky and cloudy and the medium is its own thing. I don't mean to say it's ripping off of Silent Hill, but obviously the inspiration's there. And so if you take Bloober Team and you put them on a Silent Hill game, and what they would release, I'd imagine or I'd guess would be much more in line with a traditional Silent Hill experience. So I think that actually that dynamic between these two experiences coming out on a similar time, I think would actually be semi-refreshing. In many ways. And it would kind of remind me, and it's not a one-to-one comparison, but if you remember, when Bloodstained Ritual of the Night came out, you also had Curse of the Moon. So you had Curse of the Moon there to harken back to that classic Castlevania experience. And then you had Ritual of the Night, which is obviously a play out of Symphony of the Night. So you had two different eras, same franchise, same time, and depending on your taste, maybe you like both, or maybe if you prefer a more retro feel, you have something there. And there's people who love that PS1 era horror. That's just that's their thing. And so I think the Bloober Team, even with its constraints and maybe it's not the most fluid thing in the world, and maybe it doesn't run the best in the world or have the best visuals, I think there's 100% a fan base that would love something like that, who don't necessarily want to play that active survival, trippy 3D environment type of horror game. They prefer a more retro linear experience. Maybe not necessarily like ammo scarcity, but it's survival, it's slow, it's plotting, and I think that's something that Bloober Team can absolutely master, because it's important to not necessarily conflate restriction and like low polish. Those things are not necessarily the same thing. So I would think Bloober Team, from what they've shown very linear, restrained horror games, but not necessarily games of low polish, if that makes sense. So I think there is absolutely a lane for them to really succeed in a Silent Hill experience, even if it's not reinventing the wheel, even if it is, I'm like, okay, this feels like what Silent Hill used to be. I think that's 100% an awesome thing to have, especially if it complements a new experience that in many ways doesn't connect, other than some imagery and some names, to the original franchise whatsoever. So I doubt if this Kojima, let's say, abandoned Silent Hills thing does exist, I have no doubt that this is going to be something brand new that we've never seen before. And so I think that sets Bloober Team games up even better to be like, hey, if you want what you knew Silent Hill to be, and this new thing is not really for you, we got that for you. But also, if you're not into the old style and it's too slow and it's too plotting for you, and you want something super trippy and brand new and something that's going to break your brain like Kojima always does, they'll have something for you too. So I think this is a very smart team move by Konami, if this is what they're doing. Obviously there's a ton of speculation, But if this is what they're doing, I think it's a brilliant move to sync these two games up. Obviously, I don't think you want them to come out day and date of each other, but if you can have them the same year, maybe 6 months apart, and just have kind of Silent Hill in the mainstream in a major way twice in 1 year, I think that's enough to bring the franchise back in full. That's just kind of my take on it.
No, and I mean, if you think about it, we saw this work exactly with Resident Evil. We had Resident Evil 7, which was way more in line with all the Outlast and all the stuff that was trending at the time. Then we went back. We had Resident Evil 2, which was classic. Then we got 3 again. Well, then we got 3, so we had, those 3 and 2 came out pretty close to they were one project at one point, but then they got split. And then we had 8, so it's like you can do it, where there's people who just don't play 7 and 8, and I completely understand. So that does work really well in that aspect. I didn't think about it that way. That's a great point you brought up.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where franchises can be multiple things at the same time, and you're not going to necessarily please everybody, but as long as you offer them something, then and again, like as I mentioned earlier, like Castlevania has been that, and you know what's the best example we have of that? Mario. There are people who prefer 2D Mario, and there's people who prefer 3D Mario, and as long as you feed those fan bases in regular intervals, it can be all those things. So it's like, what is Zelda? Well, for some people it's top down, for some people, if they're psychos, it's side scrolling, and then for some people it's a 3D experience, and depending on your taste, it can be all those things. And I think there's and Resident Evil is a perfect example, because at one time those two franchises were compared, like, just, and it made sense. They were just they were 1 and 2, A and B, Sonic and Mario, if you want to, and unfortunately for Silent Hill, they didn't get to continue into the modern era in the same way. And Resident Evil, things got dark for a little bit for them too, but they were able to bring things back. And so with Resident Evil being back, this is the perfect time for Silent Hill, and we already see the strategy having succeeded before. So yeah, I think there is a high likelihood that we can see a Silent Hill resurgence if done right.
So we're excited to see. And I have faith in them. Skepticism, but I'm skeptical of everything we hear nowadays.
Yeah,
so
cautious optimism.
Yeah. And so we're going to continue on with a little follow-up to the abandoned Silent Hills Konami Kojima storyline. So last episode, we discussed the insane conspiracy of Kojima secretly developing a Silent Hills game under a fake studio name. Well, we have an update. Game director Hassan Karaman
or something like that.
Karaman put out a new video on Twitter last night, since once again distancing he and his project from Kojima and Silent Hill. He says in the video, "I just wanted to do a really quick video to show myself that I am a real person, and I'm not really associated with Hideo Kojima. I'm not an actor. I'm not working on Silent Hill." He says in the video, a longer Q&A about Abandoned is planned for some time in the future. Now this is, as I know, he's doing these videos to kind of like put out the flames and stuff, but it's so weird, because he did a small interview with I believe it was Jason Schreier who did it, and most of the questions he dodged and answered really awkwardly. We have had now, I believe, 2 videos of a man who he claims he is Hassan, who's working on it. Be very generic and stuff like that. Now, at the time of us recording, the app he always talked about, everything's still weird with this man. I love talking about it and I hate talking about it. He never says that they were releasing a demo. It was supposed to be on June 25th. First it was like June 23rd, delayed to June 25th. He says it was an app that was going to be a teaser that would contain the trailer for Abandoned, Project Abandoned, because Abandoned's not its true name yet. So they've come out. I think the day of when the app was supposed to go live on PS5. He says we're delaying the app because it's not exactly where we wanted it to be. And we want the app to be properly working when we show you guys what Abandoned really is. So there's still a lot of weirdness, because what's this? I don't know. See, this is where it's confusing, because in the videos he seems to be speaking English pretty well. He does look like he is reading something off, like a teleprompt. There is this weird clicking. If you watch I don't remember which one. There's a weird clicking that's keeping pace of something.
I heard that,
See, there's so much weird stuff. So I don't know if it's just translation issues that you keep referring to a PlayStation app that's gonna be released that will contain the teaser to your game, when really what it seems like he's talking about is a demo. The demo wasn't ready to go. If you replace every time he says app, I replaced it with demo in my mind, and it made sense. The demo wasn't ready to go. Now they're saying the demo is going to be late in August. So I know he's come out pretty clear. There is a man on camera saying he's Hassan. I do think this is something. It's mixed. Where I'm starting to. I highly doubt it is Kojima and this big conspiracy, unless he had someone who was like, "Hey, let's record you saying you're Hassan," or whatever. Have it be. I think if he really wanted to, if this really is the man's name, he is Hassan, he's the developer or whatever, I think it would have been good to show a title card with the actual name. The fact that he doesn't even want to do that. That he was, I mean, there was that weird thing where he's like, if you guys can guess it, DM me and I'll tell you if it's true or not. With the whole SNL thing. And there's just so much of this. There's still this weird mystery about it, and it all really built up to the 25th. I was really excited on the 25th. I'm refreshing Twitter, and then we got the post of him in a weird sweater vest or whatever, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't ready to go." So which just adds so much more mystery to it, and I'm curious. But now I think you lost your steam. Whether this was Silent Hills or not, or whatever Project Abandoned is, I think you had everyone for a week or two leading up to the 23rd. You pushed it to the 25th. Well, all right, fine. We'll give it to you. Building up to this point, and then you're like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll come out. Maybe this app, demo, whatever, teaser will be released in August. So I'm just now it's immediately dropped off. I don't have the time to be constantly trying to look at this stuff. If Blue Box Studios is an actual studio, I hope your game is cool. I hope it is. I hope you guys kind of get your stuff under some direction here. It's wild to me that Sony hasn't been able to come out and like put some pressure on them to be like, hey, fix your stuff now. You're whatever. I don't know. There's just so much nonsense going on there because there's bigger companies who don't release an app on PlayStation to tease their game. You just show a trailer and that's it. So what did you think of all this spiraling out of control sort of, I guess, end until we get an announcement to the Abandoned saga?
I honestly, in many ways, admit defeat. Like, I don't know what to do with this story. I don't. Yeah. And the problem is it has that one wild card, which is Kojima, which means that I don't know what to believe. I don't know whether to believe. This guy is saying straight up, like, I am not associated with him, and and the project is not Silent Hills. And that would be the end of it if it was anyone else. But the problem is it's Kojima, which means that you can't. It's like you can't believe what you're seeing here. You can't believe what you're hearing here because it's never 0%. But the problem is it's almost like the boy who cried wolf. Like he's done so many weird things that I don't even know like when he's being dead serious and when he's not. So like, and this is not even Kojima speaking. Like he's so out there that somebody speaking and distancing themselves from him is still kind of like being connected to him, which is insane. So yeah, like I don't know. Like part of me is like, there's too many coincidences for it to not be Silent Hill or in some way connected to Kojima. There's too many. But at the same time, I mean, it doesn't get more straightforward than someone coming on camera and being like, "Hey, I exist," and we're not connected to Hideo Kojima. Like, you don't get more straight up than that. Sure, he's like a dodgy, weird dude, but there's awkward people. Like, it could be like that. You know what I mean? So, it's like, I just don't know what to do with this story because I just don't know what to believe, what's real, what's not. It's tricky because when they, like, first announced it, I was like, it was just, it's always been this kind of weirdness about this game. Even before this whole story broke and stuff like that. So, part of me believes that it's like Kojima is weird enough to hire someone to be like, no, this is not this, just to come on the other side and be like, I was just kidding. Here's my next game. But at the same time, you know, with the story that we're talking about next, with his relationship with Xbox and stuff like that, I just don't understand what's happening. And part of me also has to ask, like, so this guy is not associated with Kojima or Silent Hill or stuff like that. but I can't help but feel like they leaned into it a little bit, at least a little bit. And part of me is like, I don't know if they're really not associated with Kojima at all. I don't know if this was the smartest thing to do in the wide scale, is kind of to tease people like that. And you can make arguments about how much they really did tease people. I would say just by allowing it to float out there as long as they did, I think is enough to justify being like, hey, that's probably not a great idea. Like, if I'm not associated with one of the best game creators of all time, and people are like, hey, this is an obvious reference to him, and personally, I'm running out there and be like, no, we 100% understand why you think that, but we have nothing to do with that. The fact that it kind of just stewed a little bit, and things were silent and weird, and no pun intended, silent, but like, no one was saying anything. And there was all these dodgy, weird things, like, is this guy working at the company? And then finally they pop up and it's like, hey, sorry, I know that teaser that we said was going to come out like tomorrow. It's not. It's coming out in August, and I exist, and I don't. And the clicking, it's all so weird. So what I will say is that I can't say with 100% certainty that this is Kojima, but I will say that there is something under here that they're not talking about. 100%, I will put money down that we don't have the full picture. And I'm not talking about like we don't have a teaser or a title or whatever. No, not that. There's something under here. Somebody's working on something. Something's going on with this team. Something's going on with Sony here that not all is as it appears. 100%. Now, whether Kojima's behind it or not, I don't know. I don't understand Kojima projects, what he has to do. Yeah. Like, I don't understand Death Stranding, let alone something that may or may not have anything to do with it. But something's going on here. There's no way that all this weirdness is coming out, and it just happens to be like, oh yeah, sorry, we botched the messaging a little bit. It's a weird game, but yeah, here's the game. Here, it's coming out. No, there's something going on here. You and I have been around long enough in this industry to know when something's afoot. Yeah. Some marketing strategy, something weird is at play here. It's too coincidental to not be semi-deliberate. This is not just by chance. This is not by mistake. This is not Hassan Karaman not being the best at messaging. There's something weird here, and I'm pretty sure Sony's involved with it, because Sony is too in control and too deliberate to allow something as big as this to just throw around these names nilly-willy. PlayStation 5, major exclusive, Kojima, like, and it's like, if they really had nothing to do with it, they'd dead this so fast. Like, do you think if, like, Kojima, this mastermind artisan who plans things out years and years in advance, can just have some Turkish developer dude just be associated with his name fraudulently, like, not being the case, and he's just like, yeah, this is fine. Yeah, hey guys, you know what this movie I saw recently? It's really weird, this Russian action movie.
Exactly.
Do you really think he's just letting that cook? Like, I just don't think so. So I think, do I know that he's developing this for a fact? No, but I think something weird is going on here. He possibly has something to deal with it, and if he doesn't directly, he's aware of it, and he's getting a kick out of seeing all this play out this way. But yeah, I don't know what to do with this story. It's breaking my brain.
Yeah, that's why I'm at that point where I just try not to even think of it. Of course, for a while it kept coming up, Yeah. And like you said, Kojima's the guy who will tweet or Instagram a sticker that he really likes, and then talk about a movie he saw that was developed by two guys in a box of film. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love it about it. But so the fact that he hasn't said anything, Konami hasn't said anything about this, Sony hasn't said anything about this. Hassan is claiming, he claims that he got the attention of Sony from a failed Kickstarter didn't make its money. So I'm like, Sony, you should tell me Sony saw what little hope you had, or whatever you had in your Kickstarter, enough to fund it, buy it as an exclusive, and help you make it. Really, these guys close companies left and right. Media Molecule is, part of me feels that if it wasn't for that, Media Molecule had all those BAFTA awards, they would have closed Media Molecule by now. So it's like,
Sony Studios?
It's hard. I'm like, Sony, you're telling me Sony was like, oh yeah, let's give this failed Kickstarter, let's give this company some money. And again, until we see what this really is, we won't know. There's so much just little now. I wish somebody would say it. I wish Kojima. And then at the same time, like you said, we couldn't believe Kojima even if he said it wasn't him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like they're all. they've gaslit me into not trusting anything. So it's one of those things that's like, yeah, there's not a chance in hell that PlayStation Game Studios, the people who are working with HBO to adapt a brand new show, saw some random dude on Kickstarter and it's like, oh yeah, he's onto something.
We believe in your project.
Yeah, here's $100 million. Stop it.
They didn't believe in Days Gone 2, so come on.
Yeah, they won't even give Bend some leeway to play around with. Do they think you're just going to let you? Like, come on. Yeah. Something's going on here.
Yep, for sure.
And I guess we could work on the third part of it, which is something that we actually know that Kojima's working on. So Hideo Kojima and Microsoft have signed a letter of intent that states that the two parties intend to work out the details on a published agreement for a new Xbox game. And there's a lot of concessions there, but we'll get into that. According to sources familiar with the matter, this is a key step in the negotiations between the Metal Gear Solid creator and the Xbox company. This signifies that both parties have agreed to a generalized deal while the lawyers continue hashing out the finer points. So this is a very interesting story because of what they're not saying just as much as what they're saying. It's very interesting that they're talking about a deal that technically doesn't really exist yet.
Yep.
Basically, so they've released a press statement to tell us that like a deal doesn't exist, but we want to work with each other. So that tells me that this intention must be a little different. Like I can't help but feel like if this is true and if this deal really isn't inked out, this has to be Xbox being like, haha, we got Kojima. Like this has to be, because I just feel like there's no way that like, in the infancy of any other negotiation with any creator or something like that, you don't go just publishing a thing about it because things fall through. So they're either very confident to the point that this is going to go through, or there's something to gain by them vocalizing this. And I think any studio, any publisher getting the chance to work with Kojima is an opportunity, and they're probably going to rush and be like, hey, I mean, like imagine, and I know this would never happen, but imagine for like some reason Sony had the opportunity to work with like Miyamoto. Like, you know how fast they're going. It doesn't matter if he signed a piece of paper on one of their desks. Herman Holtz is sitting down in an interview and be like, we're working with him. So it doesn't surprise me necessarily that they're running out, but it is a strange move. The fact that like nothing's solidified. So from what they're saying here, it doesn't seem like a game even exists yet. Or anything, but they do intend on working with each other in some degree. And to be honest, I actually take that back. We don't know that a game doesn't exist, but maybe it's just not in the Xbox family yet. Maybe he brought them a game and be like, hey, I'm looking to work on this with somebody, and Microsoft's like, hey, do it here. I love the balls of this move, the fact that coming off of Death Stranding and its PlayStation exclusivity and the long relationship Kojima has with PlayStation, and to just work with Xbox like that in a time that, like, it's funny where in many ways the console wars have been dead for a long time, but there are little sparks of it where people want to make a resurgence of it. It's funny, which annoys the hell out of me because, again, you and I are platform agnostic, but I do see it stemming up again where they're starting to take shots at each other again. And anybody who knows about the game industry knows that the console wars between PlayStation and Xbox will never truly be a console war because there's never been a console war like the Nintendo Sega one. So all of this in comparison is nothing. But I can't help but part of this being like Xbox being super excited to have this guy who like previously was the PlayStation guy, and at the same time Kojima having the balls to be like, I'll make games where I feel like it and you guys will accept it. And so in 5 years, if Kojima goes back up to PlayStation, it's like, are you ready to work on another PlayStation exclusive? You best believe they're saying yes. So it's like, I love the fact that he's in the position to do whatever the hell he wants. And if he wanted to, he could probably walk up to freaking Nintendo and it's like, Doug Bowser, give me, $50 million and I'm going to make you a weird platform game where you play as a mechanical squid. And they'll be like, okay, you got it. I love the fact that he has the ability to do that.
Yeah, it's what an interesting guy that is, because there's very few people who could just do that, and
like nothing.
That's why when I saw this, when they're like, oh, they signed the letter of intentions on sitting down and talking, I'm like, that's weird for them not to. But then I think about Sony released a YouTube video when they signed their contract, and that was like only days after Kojima closed Kojima Productions to open up Kojima Productions.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, and then a few weeks after that, they released a video with him and I don't remember who. I mean, it may have been Mark Cerny who was actually in that video with him. And they were like, "Hey, yeah, we're gonna work together, and he's gonna bring this game over to PlayStation and PC and stuff like that." So I'm like, this is very similar to that aspect. Obviously, with COVID and stuff, they're not filming, and Kojima's obviously is not around to just walking Microsoft's studios. So it reminded me of that, where I'm like, well, that's it's fine for us. Like we said, we play everywhere. So it's not like a huge thing, but what an immediate ping pong thing if this all ends up being true, to be like, I made a game here and now I'm going here to make a game and now I'll go back here, and then I'm like, all right, Kojima, let's take it easy now. I don't see why any of this stuff had to be exclusive. I love Death Stranding. I don't see why it needs to be an exclusive. I'd love for Xbox fans to play that game. They probably would hate it though, but I would love for them to experience it. It's just one of those things where it's like, for so long Kojima's games haven't been exclusive, and at the same time they were so exclusive for so long to Sony. So it is an interesting step. It's funny to me that both Xbox and PlayStation are both like, oh, we're not really in an arms race, to buy up studios and hit exclusives. And I'm like, yeah, it may not be a race, but you guys are definitely taking huge jabs at each other.
Especially a war's heating up for sure.
Yeah, especially since E3. It's just been constant attacks at each other. And even prior to that, I mean, Sony, whatever they got going on with Square is significant. I mean, you still cannot play Final Fantasy VII Remake anywhere except PlayStation consoles. So, and then apparently 16 will be the same. So it's like, they're taking jabs at each other, and this is just Xbox doing another one, another flex.
It's just fascinating, the fact that we don't see this in the game industry that much, where like the stories follow the individual. Like, so often we hear about teams. So like, Platinum's going to be working on this, or like HAL Labs is going to be making this, or Naughty Dog's going to be making that. But so seldomly, unlike for example, in the movie industry, some people will go to a movie just for the mere fact that it's Tarantino. They don't know what it's about. They don't care who's in it. It's that director that carries a name. You know what I mean? And in many ways, I feel like in the game industry, we only have a handful of people who I feel like no matter what they touch, their name being associated is a draw. And that carries a certain like kind of cultural cachet. And so Kojima is obviously one of them. I would say maybe like Sakurai is another one, and maybe Miyamoto. And maybe in a couple years, I can definitely see Druckmann being on there too. But there's not a lot of these people out there who can just like, and then there's people who like probably see themselves as that, but are like not, like David Cage. No offense, but he definitely sees himself as one of those guys who wants to be kind of like those kind of movie like artisans that the name means something. But yeah, that's another thing, is maybe the deal doesn't need to be super inked up, because his name enough, just being associated with the Xbox brand, is headline worthy enough. And I think Xbox knows that, which is why the kind of overzealousness to be like, hey, we don't really have anything in the works with him quite yet, but we intend to have negotiations with him. With anybody else would never really see the light of day until they have a game to show with it. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
So this is a very interesting thing. It's a weird time. Kojima's just a weird guy. Like, I love him, but he's just such a weird guy. All this is so weird, and I don't know what's going on. And that's also worth noting that, like, at no point did they say we are coming together to develop a conventional video game. That never was said. And he's expressed many times his interest in making many types of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if he like goes over to play around with the cloud stuff while he makes a conventional game with Sony. And also PlayStation has the movie side now too. So I wouldn't be surprised if his next thing with Sony is not even a video game. So anything's possible with him.
Yeah, it really is. And again, I think details and wording is a big thing, and we don't know that. But I mean, I think the quote is like detailed on publishing agreement. Yeah. And Xbox publishes games on PlayStation all the time, and Sony just published MOB on Xbox. So we'll have to see exactly what they mean when something appears.
Definitely.
All right. So the last story is actually some surprising ones, but actually I'm really happy for it. So Sony has acquired the Finnish developer Housemarque after years of collaboration between the two companies. Housemarque most recently released the PS5 exclusive Returnal, which I had spent some time with. The news was announced on the PlayStation blog with PlayStation Studio boss, the main man, Herman Holst. I'm loving him. I went from not knowing much about him to loving him because he's always out on the news now. Saying Housemarque's recent release of Returnal proves the studio is one with incredible vision, capable of creating memorable new games that resonate with our community. This addition enhances the creative force of PlayStation Studios, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for Housemarque. The studio has been purchased for an undisclosed fee. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. Also, a tweet from PlayStation Japan's Twitter. So at the time when this was announced, all the PlayStation Twitters did a photo with like all the PlayStation Studios welcoming Housemarque. Naughty Dog did it. It's like, oh, welcome to the team and all that kind of stuff. But a tweet from PlayStation Japan Twitter account has potentially revealed that the company has acquired Bluepoint Games, the American studio behind the Demon's Souls and Shadow of the Colossus remakes. The now deleted tweet was spotted by Reset Arrow user Modest as well as Nibel on Twitter. Both posted independent images of the tweet, which shows the Japanese text accompanied by the artwork for Bluepoint Games and the English text, "Welcome to the family." And it was the main Sony like picture, except instead of saying Housemarque, it said Bluepoint, which means it was ready to go, and someone uploaded the wrong photo. So it's an exciting time. I think this is obviously one that's made sense for a long time. I'm actually surprised this didn't happen right after Resogun and a few other titles. So I kind of always thought they were in that position like Bluepoint, which is funny, the story goes together, where they're like, their games aren't going anywhere except PlayStation consoles, so why are they not officially, purchased? And we saw the same thing with Insomniac, except Insomniac, they spent some time with Facebook and Oculus, and they did Sunset Overdrive on Xbox. So I'm glad that finally Sony's making that decision to be like, let's, screw down a few contracts and make sure that something doesn't happen. It kind of happened, like if this all is true with Kojima and Xbox, kind of happens. They maybe thought they had an agreement with Kojima, and now they do this. Housemarque is a pretty held up name now, especially after Returnal, where people are interested in their games, and it's good to make sure you buckle that down and make sure that stays home. So I'm really excited for that. I hope the Bluepoint acquisition is also true. I think that those two studios make more sense than anything to purchase, for Sony's working on like creating teams and stuff like Haven and all that. But I think to straight up purchase two studios, these are the two studios I would want them to buy. So how'd you take the news?
Yeah, so Housemarque, I mean, that one was a given, obviously, and that kind of reminded me of like when you see these two people who have been like together for a long time but never had like the label. So they've been like going on dates and messing around for a long time, but they like never became a formal couple, and then like years later finally are like, oh, we're dating now. And it's like, oh yeah, about time, man. Like about time you made it serious. That's what it feels like, where it's like, I mean, like, yes, they bought Housemarque, it's a first time, but they've effectively been together for a really long time. And so this is a great idea, great timing for them. I think with all the Returnal stuff like that, they're kind of in the forefront of the news cycle and stuff like that, and this is a great time for them. They really showed their chops this time. Incredibly talented team, so very smart for them to add them and keep them this time. And the Bluepoint thing, I think, makes all the sense in the world. I think for PlayStation's sake, they absolutely, if they haven't worked out this deal, they better be working on it, because I think Bluepoint is one of the more valuable teams that exist in the game industry right now, period. I mean, Demon's Souls and all these remakes, they've just shown a level of ability to translate older works in such an incredible way that few studios, I think, have the ability to do, to be able to take old properties, old games, and kind of build them from the ground up with such an immense amount of polish. There's only so many teams who can do stuff like that. I think, like we've seen stuff like related to like Crash and Spyro and stuff like that, which is what they do, I think, on not a less talented level by any means, but in a different way, a different type of game. But I think Bluepoint does it at the highest level possible, where like Demon Souls, I know to many people they're like, oh, it's a little stiff, it feels old. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a new game right there. They created a new Soulsborne game with the spirit and some of the code of the old one. And Shadow of the Colossus, again, I'm not a big fan of the original, but they made an incredible experience there as well. So Bluepoint, very, very valuable asset for PlayStation to have. So if the acquisition true, which by all intents and purposes, it seems like it. I've seen the images and leaks and stuff like that. It seems legit. It's definitely not a weird story that would seem fake. It doesn't seem like something that somebody would have made up. So yeah, Bluepoint, very smart idea. And so Sony, as they've been doing for a long time, is just beefing up this stable of studios they have that is reaching a level that I don't think the game industry really has seen before, this kind of lineup of studios on a first party level. And obviously Microsoft's working very hard to be able to keep up with that. It is not an easy thing. I don't even hold it against Microsoft. I mean, not many. We've never seen anything like this before.
No.
Just a single kind of entity owning all these studios that do all these different things at such an incredibly high level to have the first party output like this. We've seen companies have runs, you know what I mean? Like Nintendo's had runs like this. Even Microsoft, in many times, have had runs like this, but never from like first party output like this. And the fact that it's only seeming to get stronger is like blowing my mind. Like the fact that they're going to have not only people who can make incredible first party experiences on a action level, on an arcade level with like a Housemarque, but now they're going to possibly have Bluepoint, who can also translate older works and bring them as basically brand new first party games again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the crazy part about it, is now they can tap into PS1, PS2 era of old first party games that people probably have forgotten about, and Bluepoint can bring them back to make their first party output look even like higher is just insane to me. So good for them. I think that's very, very smart. And if for whatever reason Bluepoint is not being bought by Sony, somebody better move on that quick.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah. That's a must get for sure.
No doubt. But yeah, that was the last story that we had, and really good show, really interesting stuff. I want to see if by the next episode we can have some more clarity about it. But it's about that Kojima stuff. But it seems like we're probably not gonna get the final answer until probably August, when we finally see what that teaser's all about, or that demo, or whatever it is. So hopefully we don't have to talk about it again till then, because it breaks my brain, and I'm like, I hate it. It reminds me of like the Cyberpunk stuff, where it's like we had to talk about it over and over again because it's a new development, but at the same time that's like, until, can you believe that game is like still not like good?
Cyberpunk? I mean, yeah, we had Adam whatever, Badowski or whatever, Podgy, I forget how his last name. He's like, oh, I think it's in, he said it's in a respectable state,
like a satisfactory
state.
That's
I
insane.
saw someone recently play it on base PS4s, and it's fine.
It's back on the storefronts now.
It is back on the storefronts, which is okay.
That's insane. I just
with
cannot believe it.
a warning to not play it on to play it on PS5 and PS4 Pros, which is the same warning Xbox put almost immediately, saying for best option, play it on Series X and One X. Different consoles have different variety and something like that, so they had to put that warning back up there.
Yeah, in like 4 or 5 months, not even that long. It'll be a year since that came out, the 1 year marker. And unless something dramatic changes in the next 4 or 5 months, that means a year after release, it's still not like fully playable on like a huge chunk of the gaming population. I mean, there's like 120 plus million PS4s out there that can't really play this game. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, no, and still no next gen version natively.
No multiplayer.
No multiplayer. No DLCs.
No DLC.
The roadmap is super generic. So
I can't believe it.
Great time for CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, like I feel like in 10 years we're gonna get the most incredible documentary of all time related to this. It has to be.
Oh yeah,
There's a story
cannot wait. I cannot wait.
All right, so we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, since we do it every other week, and we'll have a ton of new stories for you guys, I'm sure. We're post E3 right now, but this is gonna be we're coming up on game release season. Once we get past the summer, the fall is gonna be insane. I think Kena Bridge of Spirits is probably gonna be a nice kickoff point in the midpoint of August to kind of lead into all the craziness. So we'll be here with lots of different news for you guys and what we've been playing and stories and stuff like that. So this has been the NeoVintage podcast. I am Jabril and I am with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed,
and we'll see you guys then. Bye.